lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you, councillors. Just for the purpose of clarity of my voice, I will not be wearing a mask today, but everyone else in the chamber is. Apologies. Item 1, I have one apology. Councillor Ling is an apology. So that's that. Acknowledgements. Any acknowledgements that anyone wishes to bring to the meeting, please? There being none, we move on to confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of December 2021, including the confidential minutes, please. Someone? Councillor Qualman is the mover and Councillor Bland is the seconder. Is there any discussion around those? There being none, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. For everyone's benefit, I have only Councillor Qualman in the chamber today with the staff, and all 6 councillors are on Zoom, so this can be somewhat challenging at any time. Adjourned business, item 3, we have nil. Number 4, minute action list. Is there any questions from council members regarding the minute action list, councillors? Councillor Qualman, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Action list 040/19 February. The lower part it says about the Mayor, CEO and the DRI meeting with SA Water yesterday regarding the potable water situation in Wellington East. How did that go, please?
I can have a go. So we're in process, councillor, and we're at the point where I think we need to do a condition assessment report with SA Water, of which we would have to pay, and we're waiting on a figure of how much that will be. That will be somewhat useful anyway for us to know condition of the asset and for them to then, I think, firm up a proposal, council and obviously the users of the water system. I felt it was probably a pretty productive meeting in terms of being with I think some of the leaders of SA Water in terms of progressing this at a pace which, given it was another Zoom meeting, at a pace that we can deal with within the COVID constraints.
Thank you.
Any other? Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. My question, is going to find it here, is 23321. It's in the completed actions area. I would like this removed from the completed list until the fence is actually erected and the job as outlined, which says install new vermin-proof perimeter fencing is completed. The notes say that a contract has been awarded, but a start date has not been confirmed. Therefore, I reckon that should just stay on the action list. It's not completed.
In relation to the swims ponds?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Anyone else in the minute action list?
I've just got one, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Arthur.
23421. It's regarding the special legislation that's in at the present moment for holding Zoom meetings. We're going to change our policy on it, and I'm just thinking, why rush it? Because it'll be changed at any rate, and in fact the Zoom meetings will no longer be allowed. So why not just let it go in abeyance until we find out what the government's going to do, instead of going to the time and effort of going through all the necessary to change it, when it'll be changed automatically if they go back to everybody has to be at a council meeting.
So through you, Mayor. The intent just before Christmas and before the current variant of Omicron was around, there was a easing of restrictions, and the contagiousness of the Delta wasn't as strong, and so there was a expectation that we would, in the new year, come back to face-to-face meetings. The introduction of the variant Omicron now has sort of changed that, and you can see restrictions returning into what we do. I'm not sure, Councillor Arthur, where we go with this at the moment. I think we let it sit for a minute, leave the Zoom meetings as an option, because that's the way it is at the moment. And then if the environment changes with the Omicron in a couple of weeks or months' time, we then go back to looking at whether Zoom meetings, and it'll all be based on a risk assessment of what makes sense from a risk perspective of everybody in the chamber, everybody out of the chamber, and what COVID is doing at a particular point in time. So that's a long-winded answer of saying at this point, I think we leave it as it is with the Zoom, like you said, but there may be a point in the future where that variant's run its course and restrictions are starting to free up again. And so we then do a risk assessment that looks like there's absolutely no risk or a low acceptable risk of everybody coming back into the chamber. So I think it's just taking it one step at a time, depending on where the actual COVID is going.
Yeah, just Mr. Mayor, could I just
Certainly.
what I mean is let's not go hasty and do it. Let's put it down in the, like in the 4 or 5 months job, because in 4 or 5 months it may change. And it's legislation that's changed it, not us. It's not our ruling, it's the government's ruling that you don't have to be in the chambers to have a meeting now. So let's wait until see what happens in the next 3 or 4 months, because we could very well in the next 2 months go through and change it and say it's all right, to have meetings by Zoom, which you can now anyway. And then in 2 months later, we've got to change it back again. So, I can't see the point.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, councillors. We move on. 5.1 questions with notice. Councillor Qualman has a question there. You've seen the answer, councillor. You wish to add anything more?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to say, well, thank you for the response from the CEO, and it's a good thing that council will write to the DIPTI for requests of surveillance of the marina, especially at the holiday season when there's a lot more watercraft utilising those waters. Now, through the chair to the DRI, have we got enough speed signs in there, or are they sufficient, please?
Matt, you want to have a go?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. The 4-knot signs that are in place are probably compliant. Whether there's enough or not, I guess, is a debatable question. So it's something we can discuss with DIT, and we'll get back to you on that with regards to whether there's additional signage that we can implement to help assist the ongoing issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that question? No? Okay. We move on to 5.2, questions without notice. Councillors? Councillor Bland? Unmute. Please.
Thank you. I've had reason to go and have a look at the Lions Park Children's Playground and Pelican following discussion with some parents and concerns. I know that the playground equipment is up for repair. However, the softball is in significantly bad condition. Also, walking the hill that the children would walk, there is definitely some soft patches underneath that. That certainly needs some looking at as soon as possible. I think it's reasonably urgent. The other issue that's come up as a part of that also is the Pelican. I'm councillor aware of just how the state of the Pelican and the damage that's been done, possibly due to the cockies or possibly due to weather. It needs an urgent look at.
Your question is, are we aware that the Pelican's not in good order?
That's the second question. The first question is, how soon will the softball in the playground be repaired? It is quite dangerous in places.
So through
To the CEO.
We are aware of the condition of the playground, and I'm looking at the director, but it is on our list of repairs. We know that it does need some attention. The second one and we can get back to you, councillor, around Bland with the time frame of when that is happening. The second one is around the Pelican itself. The Pelican itself needs a conservation plan because it's a piece of timber and it's an artwork that's chipped into a living tree. It needs a conservation plan. We know that we haven't made any plans yet to actually do that, but it does need a conservation plan.
With through you, Mr. Mayor, with due respect, I think it needs a plan yesterday. it's already in dire straits if somebody doesn't come and look. I have some photos of that. The wings will fall off soon if somebody doesn't do something.
We can look at that. We can look
Okay.
at that, councillor Bland.
Questions
And-
without notice? You got a second one, councillor?
No, I'd just like to follow up on the softball. I think that's becoming to a point where we'll have to fence it off if we don't do something.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor?
Through you, Mayor, a couple of residents of Wellington East contacted me during the Christmas break to say that they had assisted some tourists or people in B&Bs at the boat ramp where they had put in the ski boats. This is at the Wellington East Reserve boat ramp. They'd put in their ski boats, and on one instance, the wheels at the back of the trailer wheels had gone off the edge, if you like. So they seemed to think that the trailer and the boats were not excessively large. They were just a regular size. But the query was whether or not there's been some damage to the edge of the actual ramp, or whether the ramp is long enough, or if something's happened in that area, which means that just a regular sized boat is having difficulty in judging where the end of the ramp is.
Through you,
The
Mayor.
CEO, yep.
I'm not aware of any damage to, and I'm looking at the director. Do we know that there's any damage to it? And the other thing is we'll also make a judgment about whether it's compliant with design code around how a boat ramp is built. But I'll just look at the director about whether there is any damage that we're aware of.
Yeah, thanks for your question, and through you, Mayor. Every boat ramp that I've been involved in along the river has this issue. The main reason being is that people with large ski boats no longer like winching their boats onto trailers, and they like using the power of the engines to drive onto trailers, which scours out the toe of ramps. It's an ongoing issue, and it's a public use issue, inconvenient for most users. Jet skis do the same thing. All the boat ramps that I've been involved in on the river, we've had to either extend or install ballast or other material at the toe of the ramp to cause this issue, which provides problems in itself. So it's a user issue, and it's something that we could put signs up to please use, manual winches to de-rig your boats rather than using your engines. It is an ongoing problem, and it's not isolated to Wellington.
No, councillor, I think we'll have a look into that.
Thank you. Even signage would be good.
Yeah, signage, or perhaps we have a look at whether the original design was long enough. Councillor Qualman.
Thank you. Through the chair to the DRI, where is council at regarding Potalic Road at the present time, please?
Yeah, thanks for your question, through you, Mayor. Potalic Road geotechnical design or geotechnical investigation is now complete. The geotech engineers have the data and they're working through the results of that in the lab, hopefully to get some results towards the end of January. The pavement design will then be conducted during February, which will then inform us of our construction methodology, which will likely take place in late February through March. The intent is, as we've spoken about before, is to deliver approximately about 3 Ks for the worst sections, depending the design and the cost of that, implementing that design. As I said, in March 2022.
Any other questions without notice?
Yeah, I got one question to the CEO.
Arthur, then councillor Yench. Yep.
All the elected members received a letter from Jeff Smith regarding some problems he saw down here at Tintinara. Has that answered? Has he been answered? Has the CEO written back to him?
So what we've done is I've said to Mr. Smith that we would arrange a time for us to meet, and so we're just in the process of finding a mutually agreeable time for the Mayor and I to meet with him.
The other thing is a question to the Infrastructure and Assets Manager regarding the mowing of the airport out there. Has that been completed?
Tintinara Airfield.
Through you, Mayor, I'm not sure of the answer to that question, but I'll provide you an answer as soon as possible.
Yeah, because I was out there on Saturday and had a look, and it's been a hell of a lot of it's been mowed, but most of the stuff, the parts that we own, haven't been owned. It's almost as if we don't really know what we own out there after we've spent a lot of money, or a lot of time and effort and money just recently finding out what we do own. So maybe it needs an on-site visit to find out what is actually ours and what is not.
So, yeah, thank you, councillor. So the CEO and I've asked to come to meet Jeff Smith in relation to the airfield and have a bit of a look around. So we'll do that as soon as possible. And I think you sent some more information through. Well, he did only a couple of days ago, which we've got to review.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Yanch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the CEO in regards the COVID issues that we're all facing. Firstly, it's a three-part. Firstly, have there been any further staff infections? Second, what are now any new measures that have been put in place to protect staff and our general public? And the third one being that many of us would be aware that Mid-Murray Council now have mandated vaccinations for staff. And I am not suggesting that we look into that at the moment, but I am asking whether other councils within our region are actively looking at it. And if so, what is likely to happen?
So CEO.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So for the first question, we've had one case of a staff member prior to Christmas that I alerted councillors to. It's the only case we've had. We've had a couple of staff who have been close contacts and followed the regime that SA Health set out at the particular time that they were close contact. The second question was that on the return from leave, because the current COVID variant is much more voracious than the last, we have installed, we have asked staff to wear masks when inside, which is in line with the expectations across the state. We've also asked staff to be very particular of social distancing and personal hygiene. So that is in place now. We have also, in conjunction with the local government association, purchasing 500 of the rapid antigen test kits. And we intend to use those with staff who may go on leave, but who go on leave, and before they come back, we'll ask them to do a test at home to make sure that they're not COVID positive. We know that when we're on leave, we mix with a whole lot of people that we don't normally, so it's just an extra precaution before they come back into the workplace. There may also be occasions where we have staff who will go into sensitive areas. We have no legislative requirements of any of our work. We don't have aged care facilities. We don't have childcare facilities in the places where mandating of the vaccination is expected. But at Relkin, which is a vulnerable community, we've put in place with the contractor a arrangement where we minimise the staff and the contractors touching of the people, touching is the wrong word, of association with people in the community to ensure their safety. So they're the things that we're doing at the moment. What was your last question, Councillor? Vaccination mandate. As far as I'm aware, Mid-Murray is the only council that has mandated at this point, and the director who knows about these things is nodding at me. We are not going down the mandating path. From a staff safety, we have a responsibility to make sure staff work in a safe environment, and that includes vaccinated and unvaccinated staff. So if we had a staff member who is unvaccinated and we thought that the job that they were doing required some extra precautions, we would take that into account. We have developed a policy for staff to ensure that everybody is, I suppose, aware of what the requirements are. But at this stage, it's about encouraging staff to be vaccinated. But really the aim of the game is to make sure that staff within the council are as safe as possible, regardless of their vaccination status. We will continue to review that. We take our advice from SA Health, and it would only be if they mandated it from a state legislative point of view, we would mandate it locally, but at this point, we're not intending to do that.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you to the CEO for the answer.
Cheers. Councillor Bland.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, just a follow-up question on that. And I gather from what the CEO has said that we obviously have policies in place. Can we be assured that the procedures for cleaning, in particular of public toilets, where we've had significant numbers of people coming through our communities, has actually increased? Also to the point of wearing appropriate PPE during that, given that bodily fluids will harbour the viruses for a significant period of time.
Through you, Mayor. The staff who are involved with cleaning the toilets do wear the appropriate PPE required for that position, and we're aware at this time of the year it is a very busy time, so the cleaning regimes of the toilets reflect that.
Thank you.
Any other questions without notice? Councillor Rountree.
It's just interesting what Councillor Bland just said. I was just wondering if there is any stats on how many people have actually caught COVID from toilets.
Through you, Mayor, we don't see any statistics, and I'm not sure that SA Health even collect that type of statistic. Excuse me,
Okay.
not COVID. I'm sure they don't collect that statistic. They're more concerned about who you've been in contact with and who is positive, and the risks then to the individuals who aren't vaccinated or even vaccinated of catching COVID. So they may, but we're not privy to it.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Arthur, you've got your hand up for no way you have it. I think.
Just holding my head up, sir.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, I'm going to take it that's the end of questions without notice and move on to council member reports. My report, 6.1. Is there any questions around that? I did not attend this morning as an observer, by the way, to the audit committee.
So, can I just make a comment?
Yes, certainly.
Through you, Mayor, what we're going to do with these reports is to make a cut-off date, because it is getting a little difficult to juggle the meetings that are very close to council. So what we probably will do is make a cut-off point, most likely the last day of the month prior, so that then there's a cycle of the report that comes to council will reflect a particular period for every meeting, rather than trying to second guess whether the mayor's come as an observer or not.
Thank you. So I have actually asked for a cut-off date because, particularly for my report, it predicts where I may be, and that doesn't always work out. Okay. Council members' report. Councillor Qualman, you got anything to add to your report?
No, Mr Mayor.
No questions? Okay, we move to item 7, motions with notice. Councillor Taylor. Moving it as read, or?
I'd like a small amendment to it, if I may, Mayor.
Yes.
It's just in the wording. So where it says, so council include installation of the proposed toilet and its infrastructure, along with general and extensive cleanup of weeds and overgrowth, removing the words "and reeds."
Okay, so it would read that council include installation of the proposed toilet and its infrastructure, along with a general and extensive cleanup of weeds and overgrowth in stage 1 of the Wellington East Reserve project. That's the wording you'd like? Just a slight
Yes,
amendment.
please. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a hand up as a seconder, I presume. It's Councillor Rountree.
Yes, Mayor, I'm happy to
Yep.
second.
So perhaps come back to you, Councillor Taylor. Are you want to speak to your motion?
Not at this stage, no.
Okay, Councillor Rountree.
No, I don't have anything further to add than what's written there.
Anyone else?
Could I just ask one question? Probably of the
You
infrastructure.
can ask a question, Councillor, yes.
Well, it was part of this motion, I suppose, in a way. You know, how far into this scheme are we at the present moment? we've got some grant money which is going to go, what, a third of the way of doing the job that we anticipated. So how have you worked out a plan of your priorities for doing the work there?
So I'll hand it over to Director of Roads and Infrastructure.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Thursday afternoon, I'm meeting with the contractor. They've got a list of elements that are within the project scope that we can then go through and determine what we can deliver within the budget that we have. That will then come back, whether it comes back to council at a meeting or at a workshop or even via memo, to determine what we deliver within that scope. So Thursday afternoon, I'll have that meeting, and from that, we'll have a far clearer idea of what we can deliver for the budget we have.
Councillor, you may remember that there was I suppose no one was really sure what the priorities were in terms of this project, given it appears that will go over budget and therefore be trimmed back. So at this stage, this gives, if this motion was to be successful, it gives some guidance on our priorities. Councillor Qualman had his hand up.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I totally support this motion. That I did note that previous discussion that building the toilet was not considered in stage one, but now I can see that we can do it. And I'm glad to see council apparently on the 31st of this month has appointed a assets and project delivery engineer, which I'm sure would help in matters like this to get this off the ground. And hearing complaints from the local residents, I think it's important that we get the toilets done and a bit of a clean up for that arena area, please.
Certainly. So, Councillor, and just for the public's benefit, that new appointment is a replacement of an existing staff member. And in the current environment with lots of projects on the go, we just need to be able to deliver this sort of stuff. Any other debate around this? Councillor Jensch.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I concur with having this done earlier rather than later in the project, due to the fact that I believe the native wildlife that inhabit that area, i.e. particularly the snakes and that sort of thing, if the ground is clear, will facilitate them moving on rather than having this vegetation in close to where people are actually moving around. That remains a concern I have for that area in ongoing maintenance and down the track. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Taylor, you're closed.
Closed.
Thank you. So I'll put the motion, and that is that council include installation of the proposed toilet and its infrastructure, along with a general and extensive clean-up of weeds and overgrowth in stage one of the Wellington East Reserve project. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. I move to 7.1, which is motions without notice, councillors. There is no motions without notice. We move on to item not 8. Get in there. Office of the Chief Executive Officer. Number 1 is the Murray-Darling Basin appointment. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation? That Councillor Bland, you're moving that way, are you?
I am, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, and Councillor Roundtree will be the seconder at this stage, I presume.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Yep. Councillor Bland, you want to add anything?
No, I believe it's important that council have a representative there, and the CEO is certainly the most appropriate. Thank you.
Councillor Roundtree?
Nothing more to add.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, can I just say something?
Councillor Arthur, yes.
The little blurb we got through from the Murray-Darling Basin Association today was quite interesting. And it just, it typifies my opinion of this. This is not a very strong association and is not listened to, and is where the New South Wales government is going to pass the floodplains floodplain irrigation system where they when there's a flood, they divert the waters and it's not counted in the Murray-Darling Basin plan. And everything's probably tickety-boo at the present moment. In fact, some very, very high waters, and mainly because it rains in Queensland. But, you know, we've got to be part of it. But if we were to have a meeting now about this, do you reckon the New South Wales councils are going to say, "Oh, we don't want that"? Of course not. And that's the trouble with the whole system. It's probably a little bit like the COVID. You've got a national program, and you've got state premiers going around doing all their own things. And as I say, I've never been a great advocate for it. And this latest thing by the New South Wales government is just thumb their nose at every other state, well, Queensland, Victoria, South Australia, and the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, you'll close, councillor Bland.
Closed.
Thank you. I put the motion as it is, as the recommendation on the agenda. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Number 991, council policies, council members' allowance, benefits and support policy review. I think the pertinent point that I read into this, and this is why it's important we deal with it today, is around elected members standing for state parliament. That's the, Miles, you want to add anything to this report before we move to it, please?
Yeah, through your worship, yes, you are absolutely correct. Key point is that from an allowance viewpoint, it marries up with the changes to the ability for elected member to stand for state election without leaving position of an elected member.
So it reads that if a council member wishes to stand for state parliament, that they can do that without resigning, but they will receive no support as in financial and have no role as a councillor in that period.
Correct.
That's a change. Okay, someone move recommendation, please. Councillor Rountree, you're moving?
I have a question first, Mayor.
Yeah, but you're moving.
Well, I will, but I think my question will then possibly change how
Right.
so I would like to ask my question if I can first.
Yes.
So this is to do with section 12 facilities and support. I'm not sure how many councils take advantage of the total telephone and office consumable allowance, but I think it would be more prudent that instead of a $1,000 per year that is paid upon request, that we have a system that is paid on the presentation of invoices for stationery and things like that to show that you've actually spent it, rather than just get given $1,000 because you want it. I think it could be exploited, and I'm a bit surprised that we haven't sort of tidied up that area a bit more, that people can just request $1,000 for consumables rather than have to say, well, look, I bought 5 packs of paper and 3 lots of ink. Here's my receipt. I'd like to be reimbursed for that. Interested to see what my fellow councillors think, but that certainly just jumped out at me.
So you would...
Mr Mayor, I'll make a comment on that. That's what we used to do, Lisa. And you had to send in a return of all your phone calls you made, and all that all had to be recorded. So it was a big job to keep. It's not just stationery, it's your phone calls and all that sort of thing. So it's probably a little bit easier now because you've got $100 plan. So it's $1,200 a year for your phone, plus the stationery, whatever. But that's how it used to be, but it was changed. And I think the actual LGA got that changed, not us.
So I'm just going to look at a couple of the officers and see if they can add any more depth to that process around, is it part of a state act for us, or is it optional per council?
Anyway,
We're going to get Ben to come forward and speak to a speaker that's alive, please, Ben.
if you don't know the answer, just take it on notice. Your worship, we're going to have to take that on notice.
So given the other part of the importance of this, councillor Rountree, could we exclude that particular part for further review at this stage?
Yes, we could. So I mean, the rest of it I thought was, it made sense and was fine. I would just like that section revisited to find out, yes, whether it is something we have to do or whether it's something we're choosing to do. And if we are choosing to do it, I'd like some more consideration given to the fact that I think, for, you know, the amount of accounts of $7,000 that people could potentially ask for, which might not need to be spent.
I would think, councillors, it harks back to the days, and I'll be showing my age now, but yeah, when we all had to have a phone, like we were given a phone allowance, and senior employees always were in those days in the award.
Your
Ben,
Worship,
or Miles, can you add something?
we have,
please?
Your Worship, thank you. At the discretion of council.
It's at the discretion of council. So I'm looking at both Miles and Bridget and seeing if we can just leave that out for a bit further review in the.
We can, through you, Mayor. The one thing I'd like to say is that as soon as you start to target the reconciliation process from a staff perspective is also a cost centre council. So it may be that you are perceiving that you're saving council money from presenting your receipts and all those other things, but from a administrative point of view, the reconciliation process also costs money.
So would a reasonable adjustment, since I haven't really got a motion yet, be that particular section be further reviewed within 3 months?
I would be happy with that. I mean, I suppose the question is how many people take advantage of it?
Well, we probably haven't got enough information, councillor, to make it a judgment. So I think, I think we would like to at least deal with this part around the state election today.
Yeah.
We could just review that piece a bit more carefully within 3 months. That'd be fine, I would think.
And out of session, I will send you a note to say that 50% of councillors utilise that feature, and 50% don't, or whatever it is. I really don't know.
No, I don't know, councillors. So
Okay.
what section was it, councillor, if you're the mover?
Section 12, facilities and support.
Section, so there we go, and getting that reworded. As amended with section 12, whatever that was, to be reviewed within 3 months.
We'll leave it
Yes,
in.
and
the
in
review.
the review, what would be useful is the sorts of what is covered under that facilities and support. Is it if it's telephone, stationery? Is it they were the two that I thought were covered. Just stationery.
So, councillor, given that it is discretionary, I think the simplest way is to review it within 3 months.
Okay, thank you.
It's telephone and stuff.
You're happy with being the mover.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm going to take that you've moved that council adopt the members' allowance benefits and support policy as amended with a further review of section 12 within 3 months.
Yes, thank you.
Have I got a seconder? Well, sorry, councillor Taylor had a hand up. I don't know if you wanted to be the seconder or just a question.
I have a question.
Can I just get a seconder? Councillor Bland, were you the seconder on that?
Yes, I'm happy to second that.
Okay, thank you. So back to you, councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, a question on definitions. So the definition of dependent as an example. So could we have a broader definition of dependent included in this, or is this just a standard definition? And who has oversight of such? I'm not clear as to whether the mayor has oversight of these claims or the CEO has oversight of just the mayor, etc.
So we have oversight, and through you, Mayor, I'll get a definition of dependence. And I'm looking at Ash about where we get that from, but I suspect it's probably based on a standard one from the LGA. We'll have a look.
Thank you.
I wouldn't be surprised that it's in the Act, councillor. We'll follow up on that, including this. Anyone else for or against? Councillor Qualman.
Yes, I have a question. It was actually a request for clarification. Point 10 on page 28. I'm well aware that we get paid, I think, 70 cents per kilometre for use of your private vehicle, but also it says in here, travel time allowance for members of non-metropolitan councils. Could someone sort of clarify what that means? That stand on top again, does it? Please.
That's
Ben,
what
Ben, you can have an attempt at this one.
Yeah, through the mayor, I'll just jump in. So, if you don't mind, Councillor Arthur, I'll pick on you because I do know that you live, is it what, more than Are you the 90K mark from this principal office or?
Just short of the 100, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He's
So-
quite up.
So Councillor Quammen, the intent there is it's from literally where we're sitting, and you take that radius and go out from there. So in your case, and unfortunately I don't think it would apply, but for Councillors Roundtree, Arthur, yeah, the further that radius goes, basically the allowance creeps up. Yeah,
For you, Mayor, it's in recognition of the extra
that's it.
expense the
Yeah.
further out you live. Yeah.
About 10 years ago, councillor, I think it was brought in a change, and for some councillors, it is simply the extra amount of time come to
Yeah.
any meeting. There was some councillors that said it was nearly 2 hours to travel to a monthly meeting, and remembering we couldn't Zoom in the real days.
Yeah.
And so that was put in as an addition, just make up for the time, not the travel cost of the time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm well aware that as in Councillor Arthur, it's 2 hours out of his day just to come to a meeting, and Councillor Roundtree, etc. So I just wanted some clarification. That's all. Thank you.
Well, and we've got 3 councillors that basically live in Menengi, but nonetheless, it does adjust your plans, and
Yes.
I'm a bit the same. I make plans around it all the time. So not quite as easy, councillors. I know you've got a very good footpath from where you are.
Correct.
But thank you for the question. Okay. Any more debate around this process at this stage? So I'm going to read out what I believe the motion is. Move Councillor Roundtree, second Councillor Bland. The council adopt the council members' allowance, benefits and support policy as amended with a further review of the section 12 of this within 3 months. Okay, councillors, Councillor Roundtree, you'll close on that.
Just before I close, I'd like to say that the Form 1 and Form 2 revamp are really good. I think that's going to make things a lot easier. So well done to staff for that. And with that, I'll close.
Thank you. Councillors, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Move to 9.2, Safe Environment, Children and Other Vulnerable People Policy Review. Someone move that way, please. Councillor Hill, thank you. You're the mover.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep. Hang on, wait. I've still need a seconder. Councillor Yench.
Yes.
Hang on. You got a question, Councillor Arthur?
well, Mr. Mayor, I was going to move that it lay on the table because as you know, I've spent a couple of days in hospital. I've had a hell of a lot of kind of study what's been put up here against the LGA's child safety environment, child safe guidelines, and we have extended a lot of what is actually required under the legislation. It is virtually, and I've spent a fair bit of time searching other councils' websites regarding their policies on that. The big ones like Playford, Charles Sturt, Onkaparinga, all these sort of things. Most of it is in their employees' policies, their contractors' policies, and that. And there's so much in this at the present moment that is not, we shouldn't have to cover. We haven't got the expertise to cover it, and it's not really our business, is what's been proposed. So my motion was going to be that it lay on the table till we have a workshop.
So you want to move a formal motion that way, councillor?
I would like to move that motion, yes.
What would we like? We just adjourn the motion for the moment. Is that what you like, Ashley?
Yes, please. Could we please adjourn that one? Yeah, you can make it until there's a workshop held.
So, councillor, you could move the motion be adjourned till there is a workshop held.
Yes.
There is a live motion in effect.
Yep, I'll move that
Okay, so
way.
you've moved that way.
Yes.
There's adjournment motion. Yeah, yes, but I'm going to give Miles a bit of latitude because we are in a formal motion process.
Thank you, Your Worship. So what we're doing here is taking direction from the state government. And my understanding is we're probably ahead of the pack, so I expect other councils will be doing the same during the year. This policy, as drafted, was generated from advice from the state government, returned to the state government for review, and hence appears before council.
Okay. So I need a seconder for an adjournment motion very quickly now. That's councillor Roundtree, you're seconding that.
Yes.
So this will adjourn it to a workshop. I have no more time to talk about this, so I'm going to put the adjournment motion. Everyone understands that this will be adjourned to a workshop. All those in favour? Those against? Right, that is carried, but it's carried with councillors Yench and Bland voting against it, and all the other 6 councillors today for it, which is councillors Arthur, Roundtree, Taylor, Hill, Qualman and Simmons. So that is carried. So that is adjourned. Okay, we move on. That'll go to a workshop. Item 10.10.1, the Canalpin Community Hall Committee minutes of the meeting on the 30th of August, councillors. Councillor, someone moving that way, please. Councillor Roundtree on that first one.
Happy to
The
move.
seconder. 2 rounds of minutes here. Wellman. There's two lots of minutes. We'll do the first one first. Need just quick debate on that, or we can deal with the second one. Closing, councillor.
Closed.
Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. So I move to the second one, which is the Canalpin Community Hall Committee minutes of the 6th of December 21. Is there any? Can someone move that way? Where's it gone?
Happy to move.
Councillor Taylor, you're the mover. Another seconder, Councillor Roundtree. Anything raised out of that, councillors? Seems
Through you,
the
Majesty.
new format for keeping track of and dealing with section 41s is coming to fruition. I don't know. Do you want to add anything, Bridget, to that process?
So we have, through you, Mayor, we've been talking with the Canalpin Hall Committee about whether it is a section 41 or whether the issues that they raise can be put through our CRM system as usual. The purpose of the 41 originally was around the booking system, and that part of the activity has been centralised now from a council perspective. The other thing we're mindful of is that the term of the section 41 comes to an end with the term of council in November. So it'll be a matter of deciding whether we leave it as it is until then and make some recommendation once the new council comes back about which section 41 committees are in order to you for you to consider, or we change it at the moment. So that's sort of, we're having that ongoing discussion with the people who were involved at the committee level. Miles, did you want to say anything more to that?
So through your worship, the next meeting we've got is 28th of February, and I'll be attending that with Ben to continue that conversation.
Very good, very good. Okay. Okay.
Question, Mayor?
Councillor Roundtree is the voice I can hear.
Yes. Just it's a question for the CEO. I sent through some items a while ago, an email that I can't think I think it was the Hall Committee or the Pool Committee. Are those you were going to review them and see whether they fitted with what was already in the list? Have you had an opportunity to do that?
To my understanding, and I'll check, but they were all on the list that we already were aware of. There was no new items on there for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any further debate? Okay. You'll close, Councillor Taylor.
Close.
Thank you. I put the recommendation as it reads. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. There's no community and corporate report or infrastructure and assets report reflecting the early part of January. We're relatively early, I think. We move on to public question No. Public question. Petitions, there's nil. Deputations, there's nil. Public question time, I have none. I have none in written or in present. So councillors, that gets us to moving into confidence. Sorry, information document. Always miss them. Is there any questions out of the information document? One. No, I'm going to start with Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Matt, it's a bit light this month,
Light.
as in lacking, too much anything.
So what's happened is we're aware, councillors, we met relatively late in December. We're meeting probably relatively early in the cycle in January, but I'll let the CEO respond.
Given that there's also basically 2 weeks almost out of the December, January arrangements, and the information documents take quite a bit of effort to compile. The only ones that we put in were the ones that were important around safe and risk and the planning, where that department wanted to alert us to what was happening. Anything that is of importance that happened over this period, which generally the info docs are an update, will happen in the February meeting.
Councillor Arthur, you were...
Yes, though it's not in the document at the present moment, I've just had a text and asking why the swimming pool at the little pool at Canalpin's not open again.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. There's a chemical imbalance with the little pool. It's a result of it being in the shade and not getting any light. It's high in calcium, and the water needed to be dumped.
Okay, thank you. I'll let them know.
Is that resolvable in the midterm? Is it a problem, or how do we resolve that?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not exactly sure of the science behind how it can be resolved. We can talk to the pool operator who built the filtration plant on how we can resolve that. But it's my understanding that it's a result of the UV light not burning off some of the chemical.
Okay. Councillor Bland.
Mr. Mayor, to Miles, I'm just wondering, we obviously have had a bit of an increase in our building applications, particularly around sheds, it would appear. Are they mostly farm sheds, home sheds? What are we looking at here? Extension sheds?
To your worship, thank you for that question, Councillor Bland. I think there were a significant amount of expenditure in the first half of last year on farm sheds, and we saw that quite clearly. And then as we moved through the year, a lot of those projects were affected by supply delays. So what we've seen then is a shift more to domestic sheds, garages. But what we're seeing now is, even though we probably slowed down a little bit towards the end of last year, the number of inquiries we're getting are increasing. So I would anticipate that there'll be another burst in development activity. And also once that supply chain recovers, I expect a number of projects to come back on stream. So things are looking very positive. We're making sure that we can resource not just the applications, but what you don't see is the number of queries we get, which also take up a reasonable amount of time. But I think we've got a very healthy economy.
Thank you. If I could have a follow-up question.
Yes, Councillor Bland.
And that is around the comment that Miles in relation to the queries. It would be good if we could just see a little bit of information of that in the document. Not a great deal, but just enough to give us some idea of what we are dealing with from a council perspective, whether we're getting queries a week or...
Through you, Mayor, we'll put that extra information in the info docs going forward over this year.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So I need to get Councillor Arthur's attention and get him to be back in the chair, because it is taking over our audio. Someone said we can mute him from here. We have for a minute. Until his face appears, he's muted. Anyone else? Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the chair to the CEO on the CEO's report, Salt Creek seems to be a popular place. January the 6th, 12th and 16th for a Jew dipped and the Tourism Commission marketing manager. What happened there?
Through you, Mayor. Two things have happened with Salt Creek. One was that we've been having some discussions with both DIT and Jew, because DIT are planning to do a rest area at Salt Creek, and Jew, as you know, is doing the master plan around visitors. We had I wanted to make sure that they were talking to each other so that there would be a coordinated approach, and anything that was designed and built had some synergy. That's still a little early for Jew, but we've had 2 meetings so far, and the DIT representatives and the Jew representatives have undertaken to liaise with each other to make sure that there's no design on either part that is in jeopardy. The DIT project is probably more advanced than Jew. Jew is still in the reporting stage with the master planning. DIT is actually going to the design phase for the rest areas. So it was whether or not there is some synergy, we don't know yet, but I wanted to make sure that they were both talking to each other, and they're doing that.
So we congratulate both departments on trying to spend some money at Salt Creek, but we'd like to talk to each other.
And Mr Mayor, and
Second
also
part.
the Tourism Commission marketing manager, what was?
So on Thursday of last week, the executive officer from the MRLCTA, which is the tourism body, Jew representatives and SATC, the tourism body, we undertook a tour of Salt Creek, not Salt Creek generally, but the Coorong district generally, particularly the national park, to have a look at what the options were from a tourism perspective. So SATC were more interested in what products were available and how they might market those. And from an MRLCTA point of view, Bill was keen to ensure that they got to see the best of the national park so that they could then deliberate on how they might package up the national park as a tourist destination. And it fits nicely with the master planning as well.
Sounds good, Mr Mayor.
And it was a great day.
Can I add to that, Mr Mayor?
Councillor Hill, I hope that is.
Yes, I'll just add to that. The Tourism Commission marketing manager also visited a number of other accommodation providers and local tourism operators in the region while he was down here to get a good overview of what was available down in this area.
Beautiful. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bland.
Just might make as this gears up again, and with COVID continuing, if the national parks do this, we may have an issue that we need to deal with, and that is in relation to our dump points, both at Menengi and Tailem Bend, where we have no water facilities or connections. It has been an issue pretty much significantly over many holiday periods. We'll have to look at it at some point.
Councillor, you're saying that at both our Menengi and Tailem Bend, but Menengi hasn't got water supply there at all.
That's where you met.
Correct. Or connections to the schemes at all. So we would need to be looking at that. It's just always a call out at some point. Whether because of blockages or just overuse.
Management's aware of that, Councillor. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions around the information document? Righto, thank you. We'll conclude that. Move to item 16, confidential items. So for those watching the live stream, please be advised that the meeting is about to move into confidence and the live stream will stop. For those who wish to view the end of the meeting, the video will be available on YouTube after today's meeting.